Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today we are reviewing the 28 treasonous crimes committed by Comey, and we left off with items 1 through 8, and now, Thomas, you're continuing with number 9.
This is so exciting. Just looking at this, it makes me so happy because once we get the court all set up, it's only going to take about 15 minutes to put Comey in jail. I mean, literally. All we have to do is ask him a series of 28 questions, and it doesn't even matter what his answer is because we already have the indictable evidence. So let's go on to point number 9. Point number 9, one of my favorite, the Trump Tower frame-up with Natalia Veselnitskaya, who they tried to act like was a Russian spy coming to get Trump involved in some kind of conspiracy, when in fact it was the State Department that allowed her to come in. This is Hillary's 7th floor. The State Department allowed her to come into this country where she was banned, because she is a Russian spy. So is Renat Akhmetshin, who is Hillary's personal Russian spy, and so is Ike Kavaladze and the other ones who were there. It was a frame-up. It was a setup. They were lured in by saying they had dirt on Hillary, and so what? That's not illegal. They were doing that to Trump like crazy. They didn't know who these people were. They thought it was about the Magnitsky Act. And so even Manafort was there. Don Jr. was there. They weren't hiding anything. But what was being hidden is that Robert Hannigan, the head of the General Communications Headquarters, the GCHQ in Britain, the head of their NSA, or kind of NSA counterpart, was wiretapping Trump Towers. Not only was Manafort's phone being tapped, not only was Don Jr.'s phone being tapped, but they actually wanted the very faxes, and they wanted the telephone conversations. And we know they had those, and they were used, and they were leaked to the press instantaneously, which shows it was an inside job, and the press was part of it. But if you look at that, Natalia Veselnitskaya met with Glenn Simpson, the head of Fusion GPS, before and after the Trump Towers frame-up meeting. And she had nothing to report because they didn't bite, and she didn't really, I don't think she understood what Felix had brought her there for. But it was Felix, of course, who set this up. Felix is the one who can speak with all of them and get Rob Goldstone, his friend, and others to come there to make it look as if it is some kind of Russian conspiracy collusion right there at Trump Towers, and it's about money, and it's about getting the 33,000 secret emails. Okay, the 33,000 emails. Okay, stop right there. That was what was used for the Trump Tower setup. That was what was used for George Papadopoulos. We know that those 33,000 are in the office of the director of the FBI right now because he testified to that. He has all 33,000 in 2 different forums. So when Hillary tried to get rid of them, they were gotten rid of. And so that was actually fake. That was used as the bait. That was the chumming to say that the Russians had hacked and had the missing emails. Those missing emails, what were they? They were supposed to be about having children and going to yoga class and nothing. Why would the 33,000 emails contain any dirt? Do you see how the logic that they used in all of this is just so pathetic that it just makes me want to scream and pull my hair out that anybody could possibly ever believe this garbage, or that it is repeated 1,000 times? As a matter of fact, I heard on the mainstream media the other day just a tiny snippet, 10 seconds, and it was 10 lies in 10 seconds. And one of the lies was that already Mueller has shown hundreds of connections between Trump team and the Russians. No, completely false. Absolutely not. We have these people, okay, coming to Trump Tower, and we have General Flynn going to a Russian Today dinner along with Jill Stein and a number of other Americans. And that's it. That's it. There's the Russian connection. That's 100 connections. No, the 100 connections are because Hillary was in bed with Putin more than anybody can ever describe. The Skoklovo Tech City, the uranium deal, the building them uranium enrichment plants, giving them our uranium, giving the uranium one deal. Oh, please, Hillary, Russia. When you say Hillary, think Russia, okay? Now, that was a setup. It was all nonsense. We know that it's so bad that they literally involved the Five Eyes group, and they got Britain to come over because Britain couldn't just sit back. They had to come over, and when they want to spy on someone and get hard evidence that they're going to use later, they use one of our Five Eyes groups so that they can say that they had intelligence from a foreign country, a friend of ours, and they gave this to us. We didn't ask for it. Oh, no. They set them up at Fort Meade, Maryland. They wiretapped, physically wiretapped. So when Trump said he was wiretapped, folks. That wasn't just surveillance on phones. They have that on every American, and they have that on Manafort, and they had it on everybody else. So what did they really have? They had the proof of the British Spygate. The proof that the Brits came over and aided in all of this. The Russians aided in it. The Ukrainians aided in it. On and on and on. It can't get any worse than it is. I literally could not add anything to this story to make it worse. Point 10. Comey had Felix Sater help him with everything. And so what did he do next? He went to the Trumps and said, oh, I have a 100% sure deal going on in the Crimea. And I already put down $100,000. And since I'm a representative of Trump, I want to have Trump Tower brand on this deal. It wasn't even that the Trumps were going to own the hotel. It was that Felix Sater, this wonderful Russian who has all these connections, and he put down this money. Oh, that was probably CIA. That was either CIA or FBI money, because they were throwing money around like crazy for this conspiracy, okay? So Felix takes him to the Crimea, and they find that it's a complete wash. It's a complete bomb. Felix doesn't know nothing. He has nothing arranged. So then he says, no, we're going to go to Georgia, and we're going to look at the thing I have arranged there. I don't even know if they went there. I believe they only went to one of these 3 sites, and he showed them pictures and so on and so forth, and they said, oh no, same thing as before. And then he told them that they were going to do that with Moscow. They never went to Moscow. And what they found out before they went is that he has no connections in business. It was all lies. They just wanted to get a picture of the Trumps in Russia. That's all. And guess what? It isn't illegal. And if they wanted to build a Trump Tower there, guess what? Ivanka hadn't been appointed to anything. Don Jr. was representing the company. And that's who went. That's exactly what was supposed to happen. There was nothing wrong with that, nothing illegal, and it would have been, of course, declared if anything had happened, but since they didn't do anything and nothing happened, it was another Felix Sater sanctions letter, another Felix Sater frame-up of the Trump people at Trump Tower, another Felix Sater Franklin Forer issue, which we'll go into in a minute. All these things were October surprises that Comey got too excited about, and he let the cat out of the bag too early, and that's the reason that we caught him in all of these, okay? Because he left a trail as wide as he could, because he didn't understand. He was certain that this was just kind of background noise that he was creating to make sure that Trump would be taken down either in October or before, and that Hillary would get into the White House, because they had to cover up Uranium One. They had to cover up 9/11. Remember, Robert Mueller was in charge of 9/11, the cover-up. Remember that he was in charge of the Uranium One for 10 years when he was the FBI director. So anyway, point 11. Oh, we go there now. Comey, Franklin Forer. People don't know this. Franklin Forer was paid a whole bunch of money, and we said from the beginning that if you looked at Fusion GPS's bank account, it would show being payments to Franklin Forer. Why? Because he works for Slate, and he came out early on. It took months and months and months of advanced preparation, and he used professors at universities to create charts and diagrams showing that the communications with the Trump Tower server proved the Alpha Russian, the Russian bank Alpha, and the oligarchs paying Trump money, and this is how he was paying him. And so those university professors since then, they've lost their jobs because they found out what a fake was going on. And it was such a fake that Franklin Forer he was told what to do, and he did what he did. And as an October surprise, he sprung this. He sprung it a little bit too early. He sprung it 2 weeks early. And then by the time he sprung the big thing, the next day Comey came out and said it was fake, and that was just advertising contacts between a company that Trump had hired. Trump Towers had hired this company, and they were sending out free coupons. And just a bunch of them went to the Russian bank. Well, that was because they went to every Russian bank. They went to every bank in every country in the world. That's what the company was supposed to do. So it was fake. And so those very people lost their job. Comey came out and had to trash can it. I believe it was October 31st, because he needed the insurance policy. The dossier had just gotten approval, And he just needed that to lie quiet for a while because he knew he had no hearing. It was just an application. And he just kept that as an insurance policy. He thought he'd never have to use it. And he thought Franklin Forer, that basically Comey's attempt to prove this, because the dossier has now become revealed and the content of the dossier had become revealed through Christopher Steele, everyone was going to know the whole thing was a fake because the Alpha Bank thing was a fake. And so Comey's the one who poo-pooed Franklin Forer's gigantic October surprise that was supposed to take Trump down. What a silly, silly, silly man. I guess Comey forgot that he had Franklin Forer over there on the side, who he'd paid a bunch of money to do all this stuff that was supposed to be the conclusive proof. The charts and diagrams came out to the world. Not the dossier, but the charts and diagrams were out to the world before the dossier because it was supposed to be the proof. The dossier was never supposed to come out. All right, point 11 was done. Point 12. Just remember, I'm going to add one thing that's happened since then. We now know that it's a lie that Comey was about ready to pay $50,000 for the December installment of Christopher Steele's 17 installments of the Trump dossier. That is a lie. That is such a friggin' lie. And that he came out and he lied about this only after he was accused of having paid them. He finally came out and said, yes, I did get ready to pay them once, but we never paid them. Nope. He had paid them $50,000 in installments since March. And he had known about it since December. He's the one who actually ordered up the dossier. Don't forget that. And it was actually created for the Senate Intelligence Committee and John McCain. And the FBI and the CIA. They were all in on this. They must have had big dinner parties to discuss this because there were so many people involved and they left such huge criminal trails behind them. Number 13, the Page dossier was never supposed to be published. Now, this is what Betsy was pointing out, and it's so true. Christopher Steele accidentally, because BuzzFeed wanted to look at a copy, he must have accidentally given them one, and or, as we said from the beginning, John McCain sent a copy to BuzzFeed. That is probably the reality. Kramer got a copy early, but remember, he was involved in creating it, John McCain was. So it's highly likely that BuzzFeed copy came from John McCain, and we could find that out by simply indicting Kramer. I say we indict all these people because we have enough evidence. Put them in jail because we can't trust any of them not to jump bail. Because they're criminals and they're not Americans and they're treasonous and seditious and they're working with foreign agents. So I say they all go to jail and then we simply ask them a few questions and then let them all get their plea deals by turning each other in, just as James Baker did. As we predicted, a lawyer would turn them all in. And what is in this document here, I love. It should be called the DNC dossier, not the Trump dossier. It had nothing to do with Trump. Literally nothing to do with Trump. And it was John McCain who started it all. And, of course, BuzzFeed is being sued right now. And it was being sued by Carter Page, but he backed off because he's a wackadoodle. And so Steele is also being sued by Alexei Gubarov, the person he accused of being the Russian hacker, as well as the three oligarchs of the Alpha Bank. Now, when the redactions come, as Trump said they will, why do you think the British were so nervous? It's going to show their connection in this all the way up to their eyeballs. And it's going to show John Brennan. We've already heard from Nunes and from others that when the redactions come, John Brennan is going to be highly embarrassed. Clapper, Hannigan, all the Brits, because it's going to shock everybody. Now, point 14. It is not just the Russian dossier. No. It was Sidney Blumenthal who came up with the nastiness of how the dossier could be created. He used Cody Shearer, who is a DNC hack who has been used before for fake news, and he wrote his part of it. Then there was the Fusion GPS dossier, which was created by Nellie Orr, as she worked really, really hard on that, and Mary McCovey and Glenn Simpson came out to the news and said, do not discredit Glenn. He wrote that dossier. He's a great writer. They were doing that to point out that they were trying to hide for Sidney Blumenthal, Cody Shearer, don't forget Christopher Steele. That was just distraction. That was misinformation. And don't forget then the opposition research that was in the DNC computer. Don't forget the FBI research. Two probably multi-million-dollar FBI research projects on the Trump and Trump's family, his whole family and everyone connected to him. Don't forget that John Brennan had his own file and that he spent $100,000 paying Sergey Millian, and that he had his own thing going, and that he started his Crossfire hurricane counterintelligence operation based upon no intelligence. No intelligence. That is what he has reported over and over and over again. He spent $100,000 for the PP video, which he finally got a copy of, and I've seen, and it is just such garbage. It's nothing. He was going to pay $1 million upon receipt of it, but it was so bad, he didn't pay Sergey anything. That's why Sergey right now, has appeared after disappearing and comes out and acts like he's just a normal person and does a nice little interview for the mainstream media. Liar, Sergey Millian Parachenko. We know who you are. We know that you're an FBI asset used by Comey, and I'm not even going to go into all the details. But let's just remember, there have been many names, and in point 15, it was called the Page Dossier. It was called the Frame-Up of Trump. It was called the Carter Page infiltration of the Trump team. And don't forget the elements of this. The elements of this are ridiculous. The Trump Tower server, the Russian spy, Natalia Veselnitskaya, and all the other spies she brought with her just to make sure that there was a whole gang of spies. Couldn't just be one. Don't forget Chalupa's Manafort fake ledger. $27 million he supposedly stole from the World Bank. That was supposed to put him in jail right there. Don't forget the Russian footprints on the DNC server that Dmitry Alperovitch put there. Don't forget the fact that Andrew McCabe personally oversaw releasing the M13 gang members who, it is said, killed Seth Rich, which they do have a video of. Don't forget Yevgeny Nikulin, one of my favorites, who they accused of being Guccifer 2.0. They locked him up in Prague. They let him zoom around the world for years, and then they lock him up in Prague so that they could make him an offer, which I'll go to and explain in a minute. But they made him an offer if he said that he would be the hacker of the DNC. They were going to let him off. So that in Prague, that's where Michael Cohen met this Guccifer 2.0, so he could be the bagman and pay him off. And as I mentioned before, the FBI investigations of Trump were as comprehensive as anybody can be. And then don't forget, literally, I don't know how many Felix Sater attempts to frame Trump. These were what was part of what Hillary was doing. This was not just Hillary doing her little thing with the dossier. This was a multi-pronged attack on Trump, which they thought would be foolproof. Point 16 points out that Felix Sater, of course, tried to blame the letter of sanctions on Cohen, tried to get everybody to pay attention to this. He went to the press over and over. He went to every single news agency. At first, 5 or 6 of them listened to him, and then they stopped listening to him because even Michael Cohen wasn't even taking the time to deny it. The White House said, that's stupid. And basically they said, they discredited Felix by basically saying, just look at the source of the information. Felix is, by the way, he is, of course, a felony who almost killed someone in a barroom brawl in New York. That's how he came to be a Russian asset for Comey. And since then, and before that, he had already been convicted of multi-million-dollar theft on deals that he'd done. And since then, he's had multi-million-dollar theft deals that he's been exonerated from by Comey because he is Comey's man. Don't forget that what they were trying to blame on Michael Flynn was the connection of sanctions with Russia or his connections with Turkey because he didn't file as a foreign agent, which he didn't, and the dinner he went to with for Russia Today in Russia. And so really what you can say is that everything that they have tried to accuse the Russian team of, you can basically find Felix Sater behind it. And now Felix Sater's name is in the press, all over the place. We were the only ones who ever mentioned him before. We pointed out his history, who he is, why he did what he did, his associations with Trump, and we didn't really make it too public because we didn't want to point out that there is, in fact, a Russian connected to the Trump campaign, but he was working against Trump the entire time, and he hasn't been Trump's friend. He was never Trump's friend. That's a complete nonsense. So, point 17. You know, when you talk about Comey, you got to talk about leaks because he institutionalized them. And he institutionalized every bit of them. And it's just so funny that when the leaks came out about Yevgeny Nikulin, he basically pointed out that the FBI came to his prison in Czechoslovakia twice and made him the deal that he could live in Russia or Romania and that he'd be given a credit card and he'd be taken care of for the rest of his life. These things, when they come out, of course, the mainstream media never, ever reported on that. But you have Jenny and the rest of the world were yelling it and saying, hello, hello, hello. These were FBI agents. These were Comey's guys who came here. They made me the offer. And that's the reason they didn't make Kim.com the offer when Kim said he'd come from New Zealand and tell them who killed Seth Rich and prove that it was not a hack, that it was a breach. No contact with him. How about Alexei Gubarov, the man that the DNC dossier accuses of being the hacker of the DNC? Never questioned by Mueller, but he's suing Christopher Steele and making mincemeat of him along with the other Alpha Bank oligarchs, Mikhail Friedman, Peter Avin, and German Kahl. They all are suing the heck out of Christopher Steele, and he has no defense. He's denying that any word in that dossier was true. He was basically saying it was a joke, that it was none of it was substantiated, that he didn't even create it, on and on and on and on and on. Number 18, well, I go on and on about this. We've done numerous audios on this. George Papadopoulos, the entrapment. Here's the news. The news is the guy who set him up, Joseph Mifsud, who gave him supposedly, literally hooked him up with Putin's niece, supposedly, who he had an affair with. And that was one of multiple affairs that these people hooked him up with. And Joseph Mifsud is a Russian spy. He's a Maltese professor working out of the CIA campus in Rome, Italy. The Link campus, it's called. And he basically is missing. And the Russian spy behind him is Stefan Rowe, who is kind of, his wife is the top fashion designer in Russia. He is a mega billionaire, and he is Mifsud's friend, and he's the one who sponsors these groups, these basically CIA rogue groups, and all these groups that even members of the, like Jeannie Rhee and Ahmad and others on the Mueller investigation were all parts of Mifsud's little secret groups, and they're all in Britain. And so George Papadopoulos was treated like he was the Secretary of State, or maybe even the President of the United States of America. They gave him honors. They created institutions they made him the head of. You can't even believe it. Don't even get me started. And how naive he was is beyond human imagination, that he is only at this moment waking up and realizing what happened to him. The guy had to spend a day in jail. He shouldn't have spent a single day. He shouldn't have said he lied. You can lie to the counsel. And the lawyers for every single person involved in this grand jury are all stupid. None of those people should have ever testified. Not one word. They should have pled the fifth. Don't you know that process crimes are nothing more than the fact that they're asking you about things that you don't remember about, that they already have surveillance of you on, and then when you make one word mistake, that's your crime? That's the low-hanging fruit that they're getting for the process crimes. That 3 whores, 25 fake Russians, 2 dead companies and a catering company, and then Manafort and Gates. I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit we told you that they would get to begin with. But the reality is they missed out Joseph Mifsud, who's probably dead now, because Stefan Rowe even wrote a book on it. His alibi, just like all these criminals, write a book on it to be their alibi. What did he say? Oh, don't worry, I've talked with Mifsud. Mifsud's fine. He's safe. Let's talk to Mifsud's girlfriend who just had a baby that Mifsud hasn't seen. Yeah, Mifsud is just safe. No, Mifsud, I don't think we'll probably be hearing from Mifsud anymore. Number 19. Number 19. Russian hacker of... this is just so ridiculous. We have pointed this out so many times. Dmitry Alperovitch left the Russian footprints. Brian Pagliano let him leave them. Brian Pagliano was completely complicit with Hillary's server, with Podesta, with the emails, with the breach. He knows who did it. All they have to do is question him. He pleaded the fifth. Oh my gosh. Even the Russian hacker footprints were old. They're version 1.2. 1.0, there have been many versions since. Dmitry Alperovitch is a very bad cyber warrior. Forensicator came in and demonstrated that they were not hacks, they were breaches. William Binney's group came in and demonstrated the same thing. Many others have. And so what is really going on? Comey and the DNC story about being hacked has been proven over and over to be a lie. The only people still repeating it is the mainstream media. Point 20. Guccifer 2.0. Guccifer 2.0 is the government. It is the NSA. They took the WikiLeaks, changed some of the headings, and said that they hacked them. They weren't even the documents that they said they hacked. Very bad job. You only get that bad job when it is the government doing it. Okay, it was a counterintelligence operation that Comey ran. Basically, with this counterintelligence element of the FBI ran by Peter Strzok, and basically they did a really bad job. Because Guccifer 2.0 are all the same exact espionage breaches, which were very established, institutionalized breaches by Imran Awan. The only person who had access to the DCC leaks, Podesta's emails, Hillary's emails, and the server of the DNC and Hillary's server was Imran Awan. That's a fact. And he got off scot-free, basically because they had him confess everything that he did, and then they gave him immunity for it. Why? That was one of the worst espionage cases we've ever seen. Even Hillary's espionage was involved in that. Imran Awan had total access to all of her stuff. So he was basically charged with crimes for filling out mortgage papers wrong, instead of being the worst espionage cyber attack on America in history. And what did they do with Guccifer 2.0? They called a Russian. No, Guccifer 2.0 is anything but a Russian. And then they said that Roger Stone, because he contacted Guccifer 2.0 a couple times, that he's a Russian, and there's the conspiracy they're going to use. Holy Lord, in the end, Mueller's last-ditch attempt, last straw, was to say that Roger Stone is part of a conspiracy with Russians. Well, Roger Stone wasn't really part of the campaign, now was he? So he wasn't part of the Trump team. Roger Stone is not implicating the Trump team. So, Robert Mueller, you did a real bad job on that one. And Guccifer 2.0, trying to blame it on Yevgeny, trying to blame it on Kim.com, trying to blame it on Alexei Gubarev, trying to blame it on all those other people, it didn't work.